That's right, folks. Another episode of the Razzball Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm your host, Bobby LaMarco, and today we're going to be breaking down starts of the week using the brand new tools over on Razzball.com, starting right now on the Razzball Fantasy YouTube channel. Hey, to help me break down the new tools to help you get your wide receiver threes, your flex decisions made, it's Jeff. By the way, if you don't know who Jeff is, by the way, Jefferson _ double underscore. This man is so popular that he could drop 2 underscores on you and you're still going to find him. I'm going to say that all off season, all year long. 2 underscores, 21 on Twitter. What's going on, Jeff?
I'll just enjoying some college football and getting ready for some week 1 action tomorrow.
Yes. And speaking of action, we've had some already, folks. We already had 2 football games. Friday night football, I don't care what anybody says, love it. I could have football pretty much every day. Maybe like a Wednesday off, that's fine. Tuesday, sure, whatever, you can have it. Give me 5 days a week of football, baby, and I'll be happy all day. But we saw the Chiefs Ravens, we saw the Packers, of course, versus the Eagles, and of course Jordan Love gets hurt and shatters all my hopes and dreams. I have wept for at least 12 hours now, and I feel a little better about it, but Jeff, first reactions of the first 2 games.
First reaction, Rashee Rice might be the steal of the draft if you drafted early. He's going to be the number 1 target. He's going to take the Kelsey role. It looks like all the underneath, crossing, quick slants, it's all his. Once Hollywood gets back, might even get even better. So love that. For the Ravens standpoint, I just worry about the offense. You know, Lamar Jackson's A-dot wasn't very good early in the game. Got better towards the end, but they were down a lot. So I'm curious how they pan out and if they're going to feature Henry more.
So I think before we start getting all crazy with this stuff and the Mark Andrews versus Isaiah Likely stuff and freaking out, like week 1, I would love to I should do this, like post week 1 results and then end of season results. And I guarantee you most names are not the same, right?
Mm-hmm.
Isaiah Likely, though, I think the key there was that there isn't a third receiver. There's just a second tight end. And I think that's really the important part, is that the Ravens are leaning into this fully, and they're actually giving Likely a lot of snaps. I think the Chiefs were essentially telling them, hey, check it down. You're not beating us. You're not going to go deep against us. The Chiefs have a really good secondary, even without Snead. So I think this was a definitely take what you can get situation. And Snead, Likely definitely took advantage. Good news is I do want to give it a couple more weeks, but I do think Likely is someone where, okay, all right, they're going with the 2 tight end look. I do think there's better weeks for Andrews. I don't know if I'm ready to say Andrews is going to be the tight end 2 rest of season, but we'll see from there. All right, we got Jamie in the chat. Jamie, always a pleasure, man. He's like, what's up, guys? It's my birthday today. Give me some great advice and awesome present. You know, sometimes our presence is a present, and we're here. I knew it was your birthday. That's the best part. I'm doing 2 shows today. I'm going to be on at 5 o'clock later today with Ben Wasley all the way in Australia. The guy's down under. He'll be there at 5. And then tomorrow we have the Sunday Live Start Sit Show, folks. If you're not there for 2 hours, all we're going to be talking about is, by the way, I've done a ton of research on the defensive changes. We have a bunch of research on injuries. It's not going to just be your start sit show. We're going to answer all your start sit questions, but we're also going to break down all the key injuries, all the things that you need to know up until week 1, for week 1, all the offseason changes on the defensive side of the ball. So it's going to be a really fun show. So join us. Happy birthday, Jamie. We appreciate you being on, man. Let's have some fun. All right, today's show is starts of the week, but it's for flex spots and wide receiver threes. Today's show is to focus on the new tools over on Razzball.com. If you haven't had the chance to go over to Razzball.com and check out our new tools, and here's how you kind of find it, right? You go to our fantasy data tab. We have brand new tools, including, of course, the slot versus wide points per game allowed tool. By the way, tip of the cap, one of the best in the industry, breaking down fantasy points in the slot versus out wide. Find out where defenses allow their fantasy points, can really help you set that wide receiver 3 spot or flex. We're also going to be talking a little bit today about the home and road, and win versus losses tool. I mean, every single time I'm sitting here, we always talk about, in theory, oh, I wonder if a guy's good at home versus on the road. Well, congratulations. Razzball has decided to put where their money where their mouth is and create a tool to help you see if a player actually is better at home versus on the road, if they're better in wins versus losses, in one-score games versus blowouts. We have it all now on Razzball.com. So today's show is to look at these tools. And by the way, if we don't cover your players, you can jump over to the tool on Razzball.com and check it out. It is fantastic. It will really help you set your wide receiver 3, flex spots, and also your DFS lineups. This is one of the greatest things out there. So before we dive into the individual starts this week using these tools, Jeff, any quick thoughts about the tools? What have you kind of noticed over the first kind of go around using this?
All these tools are really helpful because what I do appreciate is you can search by team and by position, and then you can really take a look to see, okay, what teams are at home, what teams are on the road, wins, losses, 1 point game, 8 points losses, 8 points or more. It's all PPR. So you can just really dive in and get a really good idea of targeting players, having that schedule next to you, looking at who's on the road, who's at home, then looking at Vegas's odds, who are the favorites. And then you can kind of start picking out some ideas of players or teams that you want to look at. And then from there, kind of listen to us and our advice and make some good starts.
Yeah, and the best part, too, is if you don't trust these guys, like, honestly, I wouldn't trust me as far as you could throw me. The best part, too, is that's why we give you the data. Here's the information. Take it for what you want to take it. But this is what Jeff was kind of talking about. So the best part about the home, the win versus losses tool is that I gave an assignment to Rudy Gamble. If you don't know Rudy is Dr. Frankenstein. He's the doctor. And I guess Razzball is the Frankenstein monster. So I told the doc, hey, listen, I need this tool. Can you get me something? And sure enough, he spits out something even crazier. That's what we love Rudy for. So basically, it breaks it out by wins, losses. This essentially tells you the difference. How many fantasy points? Daniel Jones making us proud with 5.3 points last year in losses, so that was super cool. And then he blew up against, I believe it was the Arizona game last year where he went bananas. So thank you, Daniel, for that one beautiful game. And then you'll see this thing called an index. If you look at the top here, just going to give you some quick snapshot. Essentially, it is showing PPR points per game in wins divided by losses. So, for example, if it's a 500, that player scores roughly 5 times more in wins versus losses, as you can see. That's just simple math, baby. So just to give you some insights about how to use the tool, we also have one-score games. That's kind of what Jeff was just talking about, right? He said when you go to Vegas lines, and let's say a team is a -8, that's a huge underdog, right? So you're going to use this part of the tool. You're going to use the losses. But what if it's like 3? That's not really bad, right? If the road team's -3, that's kind of normal. That's kind of almost a toss-up game. Even if it's a 1 or a 2-point spread, you could use the one-score game tool to see how good they are in one-score games. I mean, granted, that's kind of the standard. That's what, the game flow, the team can utilize. I think the important thing for me there is that teams want to use their plan A in a one-score game, right? Like in a blowout, if you're losing by a bunch, you're going to be pass heavy. In a blowout, you're going to be in a win, you're going to be run heavy. So the one-score game tool allows you to see what the plan A actually is. When they're in a competitive game, are they more 50-50? Are they 60-40 still and pass? These are really cool things that kind of I think about when I look at the tool. Just have fun with it. Honestly, it's a great time. It's just a resource. And make sure you join the show every week. By the way, me and Derek, sorry, Jeff, you're fired. You're done. Jeff will not be with me every single week. We will be doing this every Wednesday with me and Derek. But honestly, if things go well, I could cheat on Derek once in a while with you, Jeff. Don't worry about it. Anyway, all right, let's get into the players. Obviously, so make sure you jump over there on Razzball.com and check them out. We really do appreciate it. It's the fantasy data tab. Let's get these two beautiful faces back on the big screen. Let's start with the first one, Jeff. Jackson Smith-Njigba this week is on your list as starts of the week. Let's talk about it.
Yes, he's had a great camp. And then in week 1, I really like where he's at. The Seahawks are at home and 6-point favorites. So looking at the tool, last season, JSN scored 1 more point at home. But again, he was a third option. And then just looking at their wins last season, I know it's a new system, but just kind of looking at some historical numbers here. JSN did score more points and wins, which you like to see from a receiver as the third option. But more importantly, what I really like is that Tyler Lockett averaged 6 more points a game in wins. And I believe JSN will supersede him and take that WR2 role from him. So we've already seen at home scores more and wins. He wins more. He's taking the WR2 spot, I think. as Lockett was limited all week in practice. May play, but still limited. So I think he takes over that spot, and I think he's a smash start. Gino as well was much better in wins, which is interesting. You think he would throw the ball more in losses, but he was much better in wins last season. So I do like JSN breakout starting week 1. He has one of the better matchups as well against Broncos DB Jaquan McMillan. PFF really likes this matchup, so don't take my advice. PFF is down with it too, so he's a guy you should be looking for DFS or even flex spot.
Wow. And by the way, on his birthday, Jamie just throws. It's like you two are I mean, this is great.
Jamie.
This is what I'm talking about. Poor Jaquan McMillan. I'm sorry, buddy. We didn't know. I didn't know they were going to team up on you. I can't even have your back because I barely know anything about you. But I'm sure we'll find out plenty about you this season. Let's jump on to number 2, and it's my first one here, folks. It's James Conner. By the way, pour one out for me. I have this many shares of James Conner, even though I was 20+ spots higher in ADP. Figure that one out, folks. Honestly, math doesn't always math, and unfortunately, I'm sitting here at James Conner list for the first time in a very long time. I hate it. So let's talk about James Conner. Now, they are on the road against the Buffalo Bills. Now, a lot of people are going to think that's not good. They're 6.5-point underdogs on the road. Well, actually, for James Conner, he's one of the very few running backs that's actually better on the road, which is interesting. He averaged 16.3 fantasy points on the road and 14 points in losses. So, yes, even though they are heavy underdogs, and yes, they're on the road, James Conner, if you combine those two, is looking at probably 15 fantasy points. That is easily top 15 running back numbers last year. So I think he is probably one of the very few running backs because he's a 3-down back. He's used a lot in the passing game. I think he does benefit from a bad script because we're talking PPR, by the way. So give me the points. If you have 20 carries for 100 yards, that's 10 fantasy points. If you have 5 receptions for 50 yards, that's the same amount of fantasy points. So that's why I really like James Conner this week. The tool says that as well. Let's jump up to another guy, a guy who I think got overlooked a lot this year. And I do, by the way, have a lot of him. So, Jeff, tread lightly because I do love this player. It's Jerome Ford at home this week. What's your thoughts on Ford?
I like him a lot. Looking at this tool, I wasn't expecting to find these stats, and then digging deeper, I was like, "Ooh, this is a great start." Even for DFS, and then even in your flex spots. But Jerome Ford this week, on many formats, he's going as RB28 week 1, so not many people are in on him. But let me tell you something, I'm in on him. Last year, at home, he averaged almost 2 more points a game. And then in wins, he scored almost 2 more points in those wins. Currently a favorite over the Cowboys at 2.5. The Browns are, which really like to see. I know everyone thinks the Cowboys defense is good and one of the better ones. They are, but at home, on the road, the Cowboys defense not so good. They allow 21 points per game on the road, which is above their season average last season. And then they allowed 9 rushing touchdowns in 9 games on the road last season and allowed 131 rushing yards on the ground. So if you drafted Ford because Chubb is out on the PUP list, this is the time to get him in. You drafted Ford right now. In those leagues, to get these spot starts, this is one of the spot starts you have to get him in. And in DFS, I'm pretty sure he's going cheap right now. So he's a guy I'd look to target as well.
Yeah. So the other thing I find interesting too, and by the way, when we check out these tools, we do recommend that in the close games, even if you look at Ford in 1-score games, he's good. He's solid in the 1-score games. He's like the ideal RB2. If, like, for example, you spent up and got Jonathan Brooks and he's out for a couple weeks, or if you're kind of went wide receiver heavy and you definitely have Ford on your roster, I think he's a very good safe bet at home this week. And by the way, when you're looking at the Cowboys, the way you beat them is on the ground with the running attack because they do have really good pass rushers on the outside. Before we jump into the next player, let's quickly, we got Mark DeSalva. DeSilva? This is DeSilva. DeSalva. I mean, look at me. Honestly, I'm rusty. By the way, I'm hosting tomorrow. I'm going to pronounce every single name wrong. So I'm excited for that. So I apologize in advance. If your name's not like Dave Smith or Bob Johnson, you're in trouble, folks. So I apologize. Anyway, so before we dive in, by the way, as a reminder, tomorrow we have a 2-hour start-sit show starting at 8 a.m. PST, 11 o'clock Eastern, 2 hours before kickoff, answering all your start-sit questions. So make sure you join us on there as well. Football is back. Needs some help. PPR, full point. He needs 2, so 3 of these guys. We got McLaurin, Deontay, Ridley. Now, Deontay has the Saints this week against Carolina. The Washington Commanders are facing the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and Calvin Ridley, who now plays for the Tennessee Titans, is playing the Chicago Bears. What's your thoughts here?
For this one, I think I'm going to go McLaurin. He's going to be peppered with targets from Jaden. And then I'm really high in Deontay. And I think week 1, we're going to see a different Panthers team.
Yeah. So I will say this. All 3 of these guys are red flags for me. If you go to the slot versus wide tool, the matchup that probably makes the most sense is McLaurin. Tampa Bay lost Charlton Davis this offseason. He left. Jamel Dean he could be charged with shadowing McLaurin, but I don't think I'm going to make that assumption just yet. So I would go Terry McLaurin. And then Deontay, by the way, if you look at the tool from last year, both the Bears and the Saints are very good against outside receivers. That's where Deontay Johnson and Ridley are going to live most of their snaps. The reason why I would lean Ridley over Deontay, though, is because of the fact that the New Orleans Saints, my apologies, get Marshawn Lattimore back. And Marshawn Lattimore last year barely played, but when he plays, he is a shutdown corner for number 1 receiver. So I'm going to say Ridley and McLaurin, but I got to tell you, I think all these guys have a little bit of a red flag here. Jamie agrees Jamel Dean most likely to be on McLaurin. I do agree with that as well, but honestly, you can make an argument that all 3 of these guys are going to see top guys. You have the Bears also have, I believe it's Jalen Johnson is the top corner. I forget his name now, but he's a very good player too as well. Let's jump back into the players, and ironically, Adam Thielen pops in. I mean, I feel like me and Mark are buddies. I told Mark, hey, listen, I need you to come in with the Deontay question right before we get to Adam Thielen, because I need to talk about why. And Adam Thielen, by the way, we're going to talk about later too. His slot matchup against the Saints is fantastic. If you go to the slot versus wide tool, you'll find out the New Orleans Saints are a slot funnel defense, meaning they get a lot of fantasy points in the slot, not so much out wide. That happens with their 2 really good outside cornerbacks. Adam Thielen will take advantage. And here's a couple feathers in the cap for Adam Thielen. So last season, they're a 4-point underdog on the road in New Orleans. So in losses last year, he averaged 13.7 fantasy points in losses. And the best part, too, is on the road, he averaged 14.4. So you average those puppies out, you're looking at 14 PPR points. That's a pretty solid number. Now, I understand Deontay Johnson's the number 1 now. But if Marshawn Lattimore is taking away Deontay or giving him some trouble, look for Adam Thielen to take advantage of that in PPR. I could see a nice, solid, 6 for 70 day. That's 13 fantasy points. That's going to get you wide receiver 3 numbers or a flex. So I have no problem starting Adam Thielen this week because of the matchup, because of the fantastic tools over on Razzball.com. Let's show them the next player. We got Brian Thomas, the rookie. You're ready to start him right away. Talk to us, Jeff. What's your thoughts?
Yes, I may be the Jags homer on this network here on Razzball, but that's okay. I'm gonna tell you reasons why though. So I preface that importantly. But though, looking last year, Calvin Ridley, I do think Brian Thomas is gonna take that role. They've kind of discussed about it. He looks like he's gonna be the big play guy in Jacksonville now. So looking at Calvin Ridley in 23, he scored almost 17 points on the road. The Jags are on the road in Miami. And that match is going to have the 3rd highest over under in week 1 at almost 49 points at 48.5. And digging deeper in the Jags, Ridley had the 2nd most points amongst players on the road behind DT. And so I do think they're going to be throwing a lot in this one. Miami also allowed the 12th most points to fantasy receivers a season ago just because they get up a lot. So it's going to be high scoring. Now, look back no more to week 1 a year ago when Calvin Ridley in his first game in Jacksonville went for 101 and a touchdown in his Jags debut. Expect the same with Brian Thomas.
All right. So here's some fun. We're going to have some fun on the last one here, folks. And by the way, this guy I've been talking about all off season long. I'm taking down banners. You know why? Because I'm throwing up the tools, folks. We're going to have a little fun here. All right. So if you go back to Razzball.com, you go to that fantasy data tab up here, and you're like, all right, let's check out the home road splits, the win versus losses. I wonder if there's any guys that really stand out. Well, we're in the win versus losses, okay? And just so you know, folks, my last player, I'm tired of burying the lead. I know Jeff loves the suspense. It's Raheem Mostert. All right. So if you don't know Raheem Mostert, then you haven't been watching this channel. We're kind of obsessed with the man. And here's kind of why I'm all in on Raheem Mostert for week. By the way, a guy that you probably got in the 7th round. He's probably not even technically a starter on your team. He's probably sitting on your bench. He's probably begging you to start him. But here's the kind of feather in the cap. This week they are home against the Jacksonville Jaguars. They have a 3.5 point win-loss. Fine, whatever. Here's the best thing I love. So if you go to the tool for wins versus losses, they're 3.5 point favorites. That's right on the cusp of wins, a win versus a 1-score game. We're going to go for the fun of this because I'm having a good time. I think Miami gets the W in this one. If you type in running backs into the tool here, you're going to find number 6 in wins PPR is Raheem Mostert. I heard, listen, this is a nasty rumor, but I heard if you have a top 6 running back on the week, you're going to want to start him. Now, Jeff, I don't need you to validate that. I don't even care if you think I'm lying. I don't want to know, but I like it. Then let's jump over to the home versus road split tool. Hey, you got over here. The best part Jeff told you earlier, you can search by team, by position. I did that again. I go, you know what? Let's see. Home PPR, running backs, number 2 last year in wins at home in PPR. So, I'm sorry, home PPR points, number 2, Raheem Mostert with 21 fantasy points. And by the way, if you go to the other tab, it was 19 fantasy points in wins and 21 fantasy points at home. That sounds pretty good to me. And I think at this point, you got yourself probably an RB top 12 running back this week, and you got him in the 7th round. So please start Raheem Mostert at home, baby. All right. That's all we got today, folks. These are our first inaugural starts of the week using the brand new tools over on Razzball.com. And did I mention this? They are free. When you go to that site, there's no pesky little paywall that tells you, hey, give me money. By the way, I'm debating it. So if you don't get over there and start looking at it, I might just start charging everybody. I don't know. Even my own writers. Jeff's he's out. No more access. All jokes aside, go check it out, the Fantasy Data tab. We have stuff for every single position, a really fantastic resource to really help you get over the edge and find those final starts of the week for yourselves. Flex spots, wide receiver 3s, and make sure you jump on tomorrow for the Sunday Live Start Sit Show and join me and Derek. The quad box is going to have to wait, folks. Me and Derek decided to do dynamic duo style tomorrow. We're going to have a shit ton of fun. Now, Jeff, before we go, make sure you tell the people what you got upcoming at Razzle, what you got going on this year, and everywhere they can find your content.
Yep, content on X, and occasionally you'll find me on Reddit, so join me there for some friendly discussions there. Also, I'll be doing takeaways on Monday. And Jamie, happy birthday, brother. Thanks for stopping by on your birthday. That's big time. But I will be doing takeaways after Sundays on Monday morning. You can read up after the games, and then discussing our other free tool, the rushing touchdown model. So
Nice.
On a weekly basis, kind of show you some guys to look out for. So be on the lookout for that.
Yeah, by the way, all the tools will have write-ups every single week, so you can go check out the articles written by all our writers. Jeff will be handling the touchdown tool. We have Matt, Derek. We also have a new writer coming out, drum roll. We'll have him dropping his first article next week, breaking down one of these tools. So make sure you go check it out. Ben Wasley on the slot versus wide. And you can find me at Bobby LaMarco on Twitter and across the bar. I'll be promoting everything. I'm excited. And by the way, jump over to Reddit. We're getting to a bunch of fun discussions over there as well. That's all we got today, folks. Thank you for joining us once again, folks. Jefferson _21 on Twitter, and just Bobby LaMarco on Twitter as well. Thanks for joining, Jeff. Thank you for joining all the fans. We are out of here, folks.